Golf's golden boy is now its ghost. 30 years of adoration crumbled in one season. What forced him into hiding is darker than grief. Start with the freshest wound. July 1st, 2026. Phil Mickelson's spokeswoman went nuclear, branding a misconduct expose an anonymous drive-by shooting. Notice when it dropped. The timing screams. Across the PGA Tour world, the fallout explodes. A code of silence he guarded for months stands finally broken. And now we all know why the excuse rang hollow. Rewind through the wreckage. June handed us Golf Digest's bombshell. Lefty lost his membership at the Farms after a female employee reported inappropriate contact. Shipnuck dragged the Madison Club and the Bridges in. Ashley Perez surfaced with a 2015 nude photo claim Mickelson swears is twisted. Trace it back further. Augusta hosted the Masters without him. His seat at the PGA Championship stayed empty. Then came a sweep of missed majors unheard of in his Hall of Fame career as Saudi money bled out of Eliv. One phrase explained it, a family health matter. Then the whole story ruptured. Hit subscribe because these fans deserve the version no PR team approved. Stay close. What surfaces next dismantles everything you believed. The statement his spokeswoman fired off on July 1st ran nearly 740 words, and it wasn't a plea for sympathy. It was an ambush. Rather than address each accusation quietly, the response tore into the messenger, framing Alan Shipnuck as a writer who has spent years trying to crown himself the final authority on Mickelson's life. The most pointed passage never touched golf at all. It defended Amy. Shipnuck's reporting had floated the idea through unnamed sources that Mickelson's wife engineered his exits from those California clubs. His camp called that flatly untrue, arguing she is a private woman with no reason to be dragged into a tabloid war, and insisting the decision to walk away from any membership belonged to Phil and Phil only. To answer the Ashley Perez allegation, the statement leaned on a single, jarring detail. When Mickelson phoned to apologize, he reportedly questioned her account by asking whether the photo was merely topless. His team wants that word to matter, presenting his apology as courtesy rather than confession. Then came the part that revealed the real strategy. Mickelson's representatives went after Scratch itself, the outlet that ran the expose, pointing out that the platform was born inside the PGA Tour's own media operation. Their argument was blunt. Readers deserved to know that the publication investigating one of the most consequential defectors to LV Golf carried a corporate bloodline tracing straight to the tour he abandoned. Disclosure, they claimed, would have let the audience weigh that context on its own. Notice what that maneuver accomplishes. It converts a story about a man's conduct into a story about media bias. And for a fan base already split down the middle over the LIV war, that reframing is catnip. Whether it holds up is another question entirely, because conflict of interest at the publisher does nothing to erase an on-the-record accuser willing to attach her name. To understand why the July counterattack felt so desperate, you have to sit with what actually happened at the Farms in the spring. This was not some club he'd joined for a season. Tucked into Rancho Santa Fe, a short drive from Torrey Pines, the course had been his practice sanctuary for decades, a place where names like Annika Sorenstam and Xander Schauffele also hold memberships. According to Golf Digest, a female staffer said Mickelson approached her inside the clubhouse and made physical contact she never invited. She turned him down. Afterward, she reported it to her supervisors, and the club's response was swift enough to be almost cinematic. Management didn't wait for him to finish. They tracked him down mid-round, confronted him with the accusation on the course, and told him to leave. He walked off before completing his holes. What the club said afterward mattered as much as what it did. In a carefully worded release, the Farms confirmed it had supported the staffer, opened an independent investigation, and taken what it called decisive action, ending with a line that gave Mickelson nowhere to hide. This individual is no longer a member. 2 words, decisive action, did an enormous amount of heavy lifting because clubs of that caliber protect their famous members reflexively. For one, to publicly sever ties with arguably the most beloved golfer in Southern California history signaled something serious happened behind those gates. Mickelson's side offered a softer telling. His defamation attorney, Tom Clare, said the golfer resigned rather than being expelled, and a spokesperson insisted any misunderstanding had been cleared up, while adding that Phil was still tending to a family health matter, with no timetable to return. The cruelty of the timing is what elevated a private embarrassment into a public reckoning. Golf Digest dropped its report during U.S. Open week, and that particular major is Mickelson's white whale. He has finished second at his national championship 6 separate times, a record for heartbreak, and the trophy remains the lone gap in his career Grand Slam. He wouldn't have been chasing it that week, regardless. His 5-year exemption from winning the 2021 PGA Championship had expired. The USGA declined to extend him a special invitation for the return to Shinnecock, and he never filed to qualify. So, while a new generation battled for the title he could never claim, the headlines around his name had nothing to do with golf and everything to do with a clubhouse in Rancho Santa Fe. The absences that once looked like grief now carry a heavier shadow. Roll back to April, and the Masters vanished from his calendar with a statement dressed in reverence. Mickelson wrote that he would be out for an extended stretch while his family navigated a personal health matter, adding how much Augusta meant to him and that he'd be watching. A 3-time Green Jacket winner missing the tournament he treasured seemed like genuine hardship, and Augusta chairman Fred Ridley responded in kind, publicly offering support and saying Phil would be missed. Nobody connected the dots then because there were no visible dots to connect. Woods was gone too, sidelined after a DUI arrest in Florida that spring, and the treatment that followed, so the story of Augusta 2026 became a tale of 2 legends fading in tandem rather than a mystery worth probing. The PGA Championship in May told a similar story with a strange twist. His name briefly surfaced on the entry list for Aronimink in Pennsylvania, and for a few hours, hope flickered that he was finally returning. Within the same afternoon, the PGA of America confirmed his withdrawal for that now familiar family health reason, sliding Max Homa into the field behind defending champion Scottie Scheffler. A brief flash of his name, then nothing. That pattern, appearing and evaporating, would repeat in a way that no health explanation ever fully accounted for. By late June, the streak reached a milestone no one wanted attached to his legacy. His name quietly disappeared from the Open Championship field, shifted over to the roster of exempt players who wouldn't tee it up. As the 2013 champion at Moorfield, he holds the right to compete until he turns 60, which made the removal a choice as much as a circumstance. It marked the first time he'd skipped the Open since 2009, and more damning, it sealed a full sweep of missed majors across a single season, something that had never occurred across his entire professional career. A man who spent 3 decades as a permanent fixture at golf's grandest stages simply wasn't there for any of them. Underneath the personal wreckage, his financial world was buckling too. Mickelson captains the High Flyers on LIV Golf, the Saudi-backed circuit he helped legitimize when he defected from the PGA Tour, and that league is now fighting for its survival. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund signaled it would stop bankrolling the tour, throwing LIV's future into genuine doubt, and reporting emerged that the organization faced a possible bankruptcy scenario. The league's own chief executive wouldn't even promise that the final events of the 2026 season would be played as scheduled. So the platform that gave Mickelson his golden parachute began collapsing at the precise moment his reputation caught fire, leaving him without the tour he left, without a stable home on the tour he joined, and without the clubs where he once practiced in peace. This is where the fan base fractures, because the man at the center of it all was, until recently, one of the most bankable and adored figures the sport ever produced. For decades, he cultivated a thumbs-up, everyman charm that made corporations line up to hand him endorsement checks. The first serious crack in that image came in 2022, when he was quoted describing the Saudis in brutally profane terms and admitting he viewed LIV mostly as leverage against the PGA Tour. Sponsors fled almost overnight, and he vanished from competition for months before crawling back. He rebuilt some goodwill by winning at Kiowa Island in 2021, where he became the oldest major champion in history at 50, a feat so improbable it briefly silenced his critics. The comeback narrative gave him cover. The events of 2026 stripped it away. Reaction across the golf world has been anything but gentle. Former ESPN personality Trey Wingo went on record predicting Mickelson will never compete on the PGA Tour again, a striking claim given the tour's history of eventually welcoming back its wayward stars. Others went further, with at least one ex-tour pro arguing publicly that his conduct should cost him his place in the Hall of Fame. Deadspin summarized the Perez saga bluntly, framing it as a report that Mickelson made advances on a fellow professional's wife, which is exactly the kind of headline that no crisis manager can spin into a misunderstanding. The commentary hardened because the accusation stopped being abstract. Ashley Perez, once married to live and PGA Tour veteran Pat Perez, put her name to a 2015 encounter in which she said Mickelson showed her an explicit image of himself and suggested she come see him after her husband had drifted off. Anonymous whispers are easy to wave away. A named accuser recounting a specific night is not. What makes this saga so combustible for viewers is the collision of two truths that refuse to cancel each other out. Mickelson's denial is forceful, and his team raises fair points about anonymous sourcing and a publisher with a tangled relationship to his rivals. At the same time, a club he treated as home for decades took public, decisive action against him. A woman attached her identity to an ugly allegation, and his months of silence collapsed the instant the reporting surfaced. Both things sit on the table at once, and neither has been erased by the other. No charges have been reported. No court has weighed in. Yet the court of public opinion never waits for a verdict, and for a figure whose entire brand was built on likability, the mere existence of these stories is its own kind of sentence. Consider how neatly the family health explanation covered every gap before June. It excused the skipped LIV events, the empty seat at Augusta, the vanished spot at Aronimink, the withdrawal from the Open. Sympathetic language deflected every follow-up question, and few reporters wanted to press a man ostensibly caring for a loved one in crisis. Then the clubhouse story broke, and suddenly that same explanation read differently. A health matter can be entirely real and still function as a convenient umbrella wide enough to shelter other troubles from view. Both interpretations can be true simultaneously, which is precisely why the reveal hit with such force. The audience wasn't told the health struggle was fake. They were shown that it wasn't the whole picture. His representatives keep insisting he stepped away from those memberships by choice, that no club ever revoked his standing, and that the timeline is being distorted to imply a pattern he rejects. Scratch's Shipnuck, for his part, publicly stood behind his reporting after the denial landed, refusing to walk back a word. Two immovable positions now stare each other down, and the golf world is left to decide which version deserves belief. The clubs aren't talking beyond their guarded statements, citing the privacy of their staff and members. The accuser has said her piece. Mickelson himself has largely let his lawyers and spokespeople speak for him, appearing in public only once all year back in March at LIV South Africa, where he tied for 48th in what remains his sole competitive round of 2026. That single appearance in Johannesburg now feels like a ghost sighting from another era. A six-time major champion, 45 PGA Tour titles to his name, a man who once seemed destined to age into a beloved elder statesman of the game, has instead spent the year disappearing, denying, and watching his safety nets unravel one by one. The story is far from finished. Livey's fate hangs unresolved. The allegations remain contested rather than adjudicated, and no one can say when or whether he laces up his spikes for a meaningful tournament again. What's certain is that the tidy phrase that carried him through the spring no longer explains anything, and the version of Phil Mickelson that fans thought they knew has been quietly, permanently rewritten. If this breakdown gave you the full picture, the headlines only hinted at, do two things before you go. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next chapter of a scandal that keeps getting deeper, and drop your honest take in the comments. because we want to know whether you think the man deserves the benefit of the doubt or the weight of every accusation. Hit the like button to help more golf fans find the truth behind the spin, and stick around because the moment there's a new development in the Mickelson saga, we'll break it down here first. Here.